Hello students, I am very happy to see some of you in the physical classroom. Yet, as you have expressed your difficulty of coming over to the university without hostel facility and bus facility, we have decided to give video lectures also. So as part of that, I am going to continue now in this lecture whatever we have wherever we have stopped regarding the significance of Aristotle's poetics. So let us start now the text of Aristotle and what are the concepts dealt by him and how he explains each of the concepts. Let us come to uh, have a glance at the concepts. So let me share my screen first. So I hope now you are looking at my screen. Now see there you can see the different concepts that are dealt by Aristotle. One is plot, character, the tragic action, catharsis, the emotions of pity and fear, pleasure and imitation. These are the important concepts that were dealt by Aristotle in his Poetics. Now, before going to explain the first concept, that is plot, let us say Aristotle's concept of tragedy. So, what is a tragedy for Aristotle? That is more important for us. Usually, if I ask you to define what is a tragedy, you may say that a drama or a play with a sorrow ending is a tragedy, and with a play or a drama with a happy ending is a comedy. So this is usually the definition for a tragedy and comedy we give. But for Aristotle, it is something different, and he says that tragedy is an imitation. See, within the brackets, I have kept it as mimesis. This is one of the important concepts of Aristotle. Of course, carried on from Plato, his master. So, mimesis is imitation, and imitation is the genesis for all arts. As we have seen this in our introductory classes, where Plato also argues, because of this imitation only, Plato argues that poets should not be a part of, or should not be allowed to live in a republic. And of course, I also told you that Aristotle wrote his poetics as a defense for poetry or poets. Why poets should be allowed in the republic is actually defended by Aristotle. And though he is the disciple of Plato, he differed from his master and he wrote it. So, mimesis, actually, tragedy is also an imitation. And what is it imitating? It is of an action, and that is serious, complete, and of a certain magnitude. And so, tragedy is not something simply imitating, but tragedy is imitating an action, that too a serious action, which is complete in itself, and of course, it is of some magnitude, some importance, and it is considered as a noble action also. And then it creates pity and fear, the emotions of pity and fear, and it affects the proper purgation, which is called as catharsis, as I have told you in the concepts that are dealt in Aristotle's Poetics. This purgation is there. When we come to that part, that is catharsis, we will discuss that. For the time being, let us only keep in our mind that what is a tragedy for Aristotle? It is an imitation of a serious action or a noble action, which is very complete. And of course, it is of some magnitude, and it brings out the emotions of pity and fear, and it causes the proper purgation of the human mind or human soul. So he gave his concept of tragedy is this, and Aristotle gives more importance to tragedy than comedy or epic poetry. In fact, he discusses that as a tragedy, as a genre, sorry, as a genre, tragedy is very superior to epic poetry also. I told you many times that poetry is the oldest form of writing, and it is the noble genres, etc. Of course, no doubt, poetry, of course, carries its own weight, and epic poetry, of course, is more, greater than all other forms of poetry, because writing an epic is not an easy task. And we have seen many poets who have started to write epics, but they fail to complete that. And so you might have remember John Milton, who wrote the epic, a complete epic. So when we read Milton's Paradise Lost, of course, you might have understood the greatness of epic poetry. Though it is great, but Aristotle, states that it is tragedy is very a separate genre, and of course, it is superior to epic poetry according to Aristotle. And then Aristotle says that the principal element in the structure of tragedy is not character but plot. So we can understand what place Aristotle is giving to the concept of plot in the Poetics. So it is only to drive your attention to this topic, to this line exactly, that plot is more important for Aristotle, that I have included this, what is his concept of tragedy and how plot is important to Aristotle. So let us see what Aristotle further says. Most important of all, Aristotle said, is the structure of the incidents. So the structure of the incidents is nothing but plot. So for tragedy is an imitation, not of men, but of an action and of life. And life consists in action, and its end is a mode of action, not a quality. So why for Aristotle, tragedy is more important? Because it is not imitating men simply, but it is imitating action. And because it is imitating action, the events of action or the incidents should be put together in a separate manner, and that is what is plot. Actually, we will come to know more about this as we proceed through the slides. So, and further, Aristotle says the goal of tragedy is not suffering, but the knowledge that issues from it. I have asked you why we all go to movies which are very tragic, and we go and we watch them, and of course we get a feeling of satisfaction or enjoyment or whatever we call it, or you may feel relieved after watching a movie though it is a tragedy. So what is it? It is coming out of watching a tragedy. So Aristotle says that it is not simply, it is not like we are suffering while watching the tragedy, or we are enjoying while watching the tragedy, but it is a kind of knowledge that comes upon us, or the tragedy brings our state of mind in to a certain kind of state of knowledge. That is what Aristotle says, and this knowledge actually comes from the plot. So before going into plot, what is plot, its construction, etc., what is plot in Aristotle's point of view, let us have a glance at this slide, where I have put the elements of tragedy here. Students, all of you should be careful here. I have touched upon many concepts like Aristotle's concept of tragedy, and then Aristotle's concept of mimesis, which is imitation. These can be asked as essay questions or short answers questions also. So, what are the 6 elements of tragedy? Here I put 6 in brackets. Remember, according to Aristotle, actually, tragedy is having 6 elements. Elements are nothing but parts. A tragedy will be having 6 parts. If a tragedy is not having any one of these very effectively, it may not be a complete tragedy. So Aristotle said that a tragedy should be composed of these 6 elements, and the first one he mentions is fable or the plot. That is the fable. The word, it is like for a story, and from story only plot develops. So that is why I have put fable first and then plot in the brackets. And then spectacle. See, the spectacle is all the theatrical effects. Like nowadays, we are not used to watch theater, dramas, or plays, but we are used to watch movies. Even in movies, you have spectacle, the cinematographic, effects that are used in the movies is like spectacle. And when dramas were used to be screened, they used to decorate the stage or the scene of actions with different kinds of theatrical effects. That is called as a spectacle. And characters are the men and women who are playing different roles in a drama, and the diction is use of language. And of course, when it comes to the language, it is like what kind of language it should be. We cannot say that it is a kind of grand style like the epic poetry, but it is a combination of many um, dialects or many figures of speech or elements of writing, etc. So language is incorporating different levels of language or different types of languages, etc., into the drama. And then melody is nothing but like music. And in those days, especially in Greek dramas, songs are included, and that is why it is called as melody. And then thought is whatever the men and women who are the characters in a drama think, or their actions also, they whatever they are thinking, etc. So out of these 6 elements of tragedy, Aristotle considers the plot as the most important element of tragedy. In fact, he says that it is the heart of tragedy. So, in with this last sentence itself, you can understand what what is the importance or what significance, what level of significance Aristotle is attaching to this word plot. Okay, so now let us come to the concept of plot that is dealt in Aristotle's Poetics. And first, he speaks about the construction of a plot. Actually, in the beginning of his Poetics, he starts using the word mythos. Mythos is a Greek word for a story, and which, of course, should be translated as plot when we progress through the pages of Poetics. And as I have already told you, it is one of the significant elements of tragedy. And for Aristotle, a plot is not a generic term or a general casual term, but it's a very technical term. And if we read Humphrey House so lectures on Aristotle's Poetics, there he says that Aristotle takes the word mythos at the beginning of Poetics to mean a legend. A legend is nothing but a story. But later, he proceeds to define it in such a manner that we need to translate mythos as plot. So, before we proceed, what is this story or legend or plot, and what is the difference between these two? We have to keep in mind some things. This is like if you want to understand Aristotle's concept of plot, it is necessary to understand the distinction between story and plot. So, what is the distinction between story and plot? See, all of you have read Introduction to Literature in your first semester, and there you might have come across what the story and the plot, the two words. So now, story is like our real life, okay, and plot is the creation. Say, for example, E.M. Foster, who wrote the famous book, The Aspects of Novel, he says that one of the characteristics of a story is that its beginning and end are arbitrary. See, the word arbitrary is more important here. I have given the meaning within the brackets: existing or coming about seemingly at random or by chance, or an unreasonable act of will, an arbitrary choice. See, in our life, actually, the story is like our life, as I told you just now. Why I am saying like this is, our life is not in our hands completely. Of course, we always think that our life is in our hands and we can plan it, and we always keep on planning many things, and we think that it will go on as we like it to be. But in reality, it is not so. And whereas plot is an artistic creation, it is in the hands of the writer or the poet here. One more thing I should tell you, I should ask you to be conscious. Whenever I am saying the poet, don't think that it is always poet literally and poetry. The words poem, poet, or poetry are being used here in this text poetics as synonymous for writer, literature in general. So remember that. And so the story, according to the to Foster, he says that it is having one of the characteristics, that is the beginning and end are arbitrary. No one knows what is the beginning and end, of course. Yeah, and one more thing is, a story will have a chronological order, but the plot will not have any chronological order. And I have given you the best example, that is, take that story is like our life. And of course, from the lived experiences or from the lived lives of the people, only stories come out, and plots are made, are created by poets. So let us see how Aristotle says or gives the credit of making the plot to the writer. So, regarding the construction of plot, Aristotle says in chapter 7 of Poetics, they see the chapter 7 of Poetics, etc. The whole chapters of Poetics are available online or in the internet. If you want, you can download, and if you can read also. Only thing is, at times it is incomplete, and here and there some lines or phrases are missing, and we may not be able to follow. That is why we are not dealing with the original text of Poetics, but we are dealing with the lectures of Humphrey House, wherein he gives a good summarization of whatever Aristotle has written in Poetics. And of course, House, while dealing with the Poetics, clarifies many of the misunderstandings and doubts that the beginners will get about Aristotle, because reading Aristotle and interpreting Aristotle's words is not possible with reading Poetics in isolation, because his meanings, that the underlining or what you call as interpretations that he of Aristotle words or phrases, depends upon his other texts like Politics, Nicomachean Ethics, and some other texts also. So here, Regarding construction of plot, Aristotle, of course, says in chapter 7. I have mentioned these chapters because sometimes you may get a bit question in net or set, where Aristotle speaks about the construction of plot, in which chapter, etc. So this chapter 7 of Poetics, he mentions the construction of the plot, and he says there that the plot of a tragedy must have a beginning, a middle, and an end. So a good tragedy or a good plot, um, of course, a tragedy and a plot are here more important, because a tragedy should have a plot. That is more important. And when a plot is there, Aristotle says that there should be a beginning, a middle, and an end. And of course, according to Aristotle, these are controlled by poet. So what are these? I mean, beginning, middle, and end. They are controlled by poet. So Aristotle says that the poet only makes the beginning of a tragedy, or the middle of a tragedy, and an end of the tragedy. So this is, as I told you earlier, a creation, a making of the poet. And so Aristotle considers the poet as the maker of his own plots. And hence, the beginning of a plot is his making, as anything else about it. You take a tragedy, a drama, whatever is written, of course, is written by the poet or the dramatist, and the beginning is also of the dramatist, like any other thing in the drama or in the tragedy. Here I will give one example with which you are very familiar, that is Hamlet. So all of you have read Shakespeare's drama Hamlet, and now I tell you to recollect your memory of the Hamlet. What is the beginning scene, or what is the beginning of the tragedy of Hamlet? So I hope you all remember that, the ghost scene. So how interesting it is. Actually, a good beginning, a good middle, and a good end, or a beginning, middle, and end are important only to sustain the interest of the reader or audience. So at the beginning itself, the audience or the readers should develop a kind of curiosity, or that the scene, the beginning scene, should be able to sustain the interest of the reader, so that they will keep on reading the whole text or keep on watching the whole drama. So the beginning scene is very important. So now you can recollect the beginning scene of Hamlet, and how the ghost appears, and what the gods there say, and how they are all afraid of the ghost, etc. You can very well recollect and think how artistically, or how cleverly Shakespeare has introduced, or began the drama with this beginning of the ghost scene. So this is how poets always make their plots, always make their beginnings. So the beginning is a choice for poet, and it can begin anywhere. Actually, the beginning is not at the beginning. I am here telling about the story. It is not the beginning of the story. You need not think of that. Let me tell you one more example of the recent movies like Mahanati, the biography of Savitri, which is screened, and when it begins. Actually, it begins a few days before the death of Mahanati, and then the plot begins with a few days of before the death of Mahanati, where the Mahanati becomes unconscious, and of course she enters into coma. So there, the ending, almost to the end of her life, the poet or the writer has begun her story. So this is very important. So now you might have understood that the beginning is not the real beginning, but it is actually made a beginning by the poet. So it is only a poetic technique to create, to what you call, to sustain the interest of the readers or the audience. So the beginning and the end are matters within the poet's control. So, where to begin, where to end are there in the poet's control. See, I've told you when we are comparing the story and plot, what is the difference? In the story, if it is the life story, we don't know when it will end. Even, of course, though we know our birth dates, etc., no one knows when our life will begin. So, here, it is like in the human life, the real life, no one knows what happens next. But in a plot, in a drama, the poet knows what happens because he is the creator. He is actually making the plot. The beginning is that which is not itself necessarily after anything else. So where shall the poet begin? We have no strict rule to this extent. So Aristotle never said that the poet should begin here or begin there, etc. So the beginning is in the hands of the poet, and it need not be necessarily after anything else. This is what Aristotle says in chapter 7. And then the emphasis is here on the word necessarily, because the poet need not think about the knowledge of the audience about the antecedents of the beginning of plot. So, of course, if you now again take the example of Hamlet, um, Shakespeare did not worry if I begin with the ghost scene, how the audience will realize that the King Hamlet is murdered and now his soul is roaming like a ghost. So he did not worry because it is the mastery or the skill of the poet or the dramatist that he, without the knowledge of the antecedents and part of the audience, the poet exhibits that kind of skill or mastery that the audience will travel along with him. So this is the greatness of the dramatist or the poet. So Aristotle also says that the beginning should not be, necessarily after anything else. Wherever he likes, or the poet, if he thinks that if I begin here, the plot, it will sustain the interest or it will be more effective, he can begin anywhere. And then actually it is believed in Greek dramas, it is believed that the Greek drama started very late. In the sense, if you take the example of Oedipus the King or Oedipus Rex by Sophocles, let me tell you the story or the summarize what happens in Oedipus Rex or Oedipus the King. Actually, when Oedipus is born to Laius and Jocasta, the prophets tell Laius that this child is going to kill you. So the king, the father, so the father and the mother, that is king and queen, felt that this child should not be brought up in the palace, rather he should be killed. So they have called their one of the servants and then gave this baby, the infant baby, to the servant and then asked him to take him to the forest and then kill him. But the servant, well, when he takes the baby to the forest, he feels very pitiful that he has to kill this kind of a very infant. So taking pity, the pity overtakes him and then he leaves the baby there in the forest and kills some animal. And with that blood, he returns to the kingdom and to the palace and says that I have killed the baby. But the baby, of course, is rescued by someone, and he later becomes the prince, a warrior. And after some years, he actually comes and Thebes is the state, and he comes and invades the kingdom of Thebes, and then he kills his own father Laius and marries Jocasta, his own mother. And then after this, the plague actually comes, or the plague enters the kingdom, and people are dying. Then the prince, that is Oedipus, realizes that there is a curse. And this Oedipus, the king, the tragedy opens with the court scene where the prince is thinking of the curse and who is the reason behind the curse. So here you can see that Sophocles never thought of how audience will follow all that has happened to Oedipus. You know, his birth, his bringing up, he's brought up in the forest, and again his invasion, etc. So that late the Greek tragedies have begun actually in the Greek ancient times. So there itself we can see how the beginning, of course, Greek tragedies begin very late, yet they are very effective. In fact, at many places, Aristotle will take the example of Sophocles' drama, that is tragedy, Oedipus King, to show the merits of a good drama. Aristotle, I have already told you in the previous lecture that Aristotle has written this poetics after going through many of the Greek dramas, because at that time of Aristotle's writing this poetics, the literature of Greek literature was very rich, and he has many dramatists to deal with, and he has many dramas, great dramas also. Of course, all dramas are not great, all dramatists are not great dramatists, yet that is why he refers to some of the good dramas. And Oedipus the king is one of the good dramas that Aristotle takes. And of course, Sophocles has written it in a very good manner, that it has become the greatest of tragedies. And of course, whatever the elements that Aristotle is speaking of, the dramas or tragedies, all those elements are found in the Sophocles drama, that is Oedipus the king. So he takes Oedipus the king as one of the best dramas, which is having a good plot also. So a plot, is like a good beginning, a middle, and an end. So the end also is very sorrowful. Oedipus the king has to punish himself. So he thinks that whoever is the reason behind the curse of this kingdom will be punished with the removal of eyes, and he'll be expelled from the kingdom. And at last, when the discovery is made, he punishes himself. So when we watch the drama, of course, we also will think that this is a very sad plight that happened to Oedipus the king, and it will not happen because he is a bad man. See here, Aristotle's concept of tragedy, of course, brings in another thing also. He says that it is a noble action, or it is the imitation of action, a noble action, and it is of magnitude. It is great incidents will happen here in the tragedy. And he says tragic heroes will meet their fall not because they are bad, but it is something, some fail is there. It is the fate. So that is why when the tragic heroes suffer, we also suffer along with them, and we will not even his life travels from fortune to misfortune, but we'll feel very sad for that. And here, this character of the tragic hero is what arouses the emotions of pity and fear, finally leading to the purgation of emotions, as Aristotle said. What is a tragedy? The aim of tragedy, or the significance of tragedy. In human life, it is very important according to Aristotle, because tragedies, as Aristotle said, as I have quoted in the earlier slides, it brings us some knowledge. So, of course, with the example of Oedipus the king, you might have understood what type of king he is, or the Oedipus the king. But he is a good man, but he is suffering for his actions. So the action which is committed without in ignorance, of course, brings the punishment for the king. So this is the importance of plot and how the plot should be constructed. So the construction of plot needs a good beginning, a middle, and an end, and this is all in the hands of the poet or the dramatist, according to Aristotle. So in the next lecture, I will deal with the next concepts of Aristotle regarding plot, how plot should have unity, length, or probability, necessity, etc. So, for this lecture, let us confine to plot and how it should be constructed, and what is its place among the elements of tragedy. Okay. If you have any doubts, you can just note down your doubts and keep it aside. We'll have one. We'll have one. What do you call, Google Meet class, live class once. If you have any doubts in this lecture or the lectures that I have uploaded previously, we will discuss, and then you can ask your doubts, and if you want any revision also, we'll take up. And I'll be giving you handouts regarding the Aristotle's concept of plot and other concepts also. So you need not worry about how to write it in the exams, etc. I only request you to go through this video again and again, so until you get the essence of the video, and until you understand whatever I have taught here in this lecture. Wish you all the best.